welcome to Furious Driving, and today we're driving a Giugiaro designed masterpiece. Yes, it's a Matiz, and if you like interesting and unusual reviews of different cars, then please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Hello, welcome to Furious Driving, and today we're going all American and looking at a Chevy, kind of. Well, it's a Matiz, it's a Daewoo Matiz, but after 2005 when Daewoo went kind of they became Chevys. It's a funny old story, but there you go. Anyway, what we're looking at here is perhaps the least known of Giugiaro's designs. Well, I say least known, least appreciated is probably a better way of putting it. So although the world knew this car from 1998 as the Daewoo Matiz, it actually started a few years previously, back in 1992, as a Lucciola concept car for Ital Design. They were putting the ideas of high-end cars into small cars, so luxury living in a city car chassis, which is a fairly new and exciting concept back in the early 90s. They wanted to get the idea of you didn't need a big sort of Bentley-sized luxury runabout if you're living in the city. You want something you can park nose onto the pavement but have all the refinement you're used to, this kind of thing. And so this thing was a bit of a hit in Turin in 1992, Bologna in 1993, and then they pitched it to Fiat because they thought it was the perfect size and spec and everything to be a replacement for the Cinquecento. Unfortunately, Fiat didn't agree with them. They just kind of soldiered on with the Cinque and kept it going on and on and on until they finally replaced it with the Fiat 600, the Seicento, which is basically a warmed over 500. Not the one we know now, the old little square thing. So anyway, yeah, they didn't know what to do with it. They had a spare concept car knocking around, which found a home with Daewoo in 1998. Now you may scoff today at the idea of a Matiz being a high-end luxury concept, but the concepts themselves actually were. They are mad, multicoloured, multi-folding interiors with very, very 90s fabric and styling designs. The front half of the roof was a fabric fold-away thing like the current Fiat 500, and the back half of the roof, from like a Targa bar almost, folds away completely as well. All canvas again, like a 2CV or a Citroen Pluri LC3, or even a Fiat 500 in fact, or a smart car. So lots of clever ideas which the industry did adopt were thrown at the Daewoo Matiz before it was a Daewoo Matiz. And the other thing which they really played incredibly strongly was the size factor, because this car was one of the smallest cars on the market. Still is one of the smallest cars on the road. It's 3.5 meters long. It's tiny, about the same length as a Chevy Impala bonnet. It's actually 125 millimeters shorter than a Ford Ka, but has 4 doors, 5 doors if you include the tailgate, which is some pretty impressive packaging. No wonder Daewoo were drawn to this thing for their new and expanding market across the world. Now, the original pre-facelift Matiz was actually quite a pretty little thing. The round headlights were quite cute. It had a smiley little face. Ian Seabrook of Hubnut has one which he absolutely loves. It was facelifted in 2000, which I think diluted the looks a little bit, and then in 2005 they completely modernised it. Like this, giving it new bumpers and front end and rear end and stuff like that. Changed the badges obviously. But under the bonnet, things remained fairly much the same. There was a choice initially of an 800cc 3-cylinder engine or the 1 litre, the 995cc 4-cylinder engine, which we have got here. It's called an S-Tech apparently. There's probably a stick somewhere. God, look at how tiny this little stick is. It's a baby. Now, the power output from either engine is not phenomenal. The 800cc made 50 horsepower, which is about the same as a lawnmower. The 4-cylinder, the 1 litre, makes 63, and obviously there's a commensurate performance boost with that as well, going from 17 seconds to 60 to about 12.5 seconds to 60. So it's no ball of fire, but if you're looking in driving in city traffic, that's absolutely fine. If you're going on the motorway though, or taking more than one passenger, you probably want the bigger engine, because the 800cc is going to struggle a little bit with that. Look at this battery. Just notice this mad tall battery. That's mad and tall, but it's all very cleverly packaged. Look how little space of the car is taken up by the engine compartment. Almost none of it at all. So there's lots more room for legroom, knee room, headroom. Everything in this car is really cleverly thought out. Right, let's see how good the clever packaging is in the boot. Okay, so it's not a massive boot, but considering the size of the car, it's not that bad either. You can certainly squeeze a couple of weekend bags in there, or a week's worth of shopping if you cram in and maybe use the back seat. Certainly it's bigger than an R50 Mini's load space area. And under the carpet we've even got a spare wheel. Dinky wee thing. Well, I suppose when we've got tiny little wheels like this, you can afford to squeeze in a little 13-inch, whatever it is, under here. Right, let's take a look inside the car. Now, first of all, notice how very tall these doors are, because basically it is classed as a mini MPV, probably the smallest MPV on the market, but with lots of interior space. So let's climb aboard, see what we can see. So first of all, it's a lot of plastic, hard plastic that does not forgive a tap very easily on the old knuckles, so don't be doing that too much. We have got a carryover from the days of the 1990s with some pretty wild fabric patterns going on over here. I think these are all new for the Chevy era. You'll notice it's got manual mirror adjustment here on the doors. Nothing on the passenger side, I notice. We'll hunt for that in a second, but yeah, blank space on that side just for that. Exposed screw heads here and here, so it's clearly done down to a price. We've got a solid door pull, a very plasticky door handle, and twin front electric windows, manuals in the rear. We have got a little cup holder in the door, which, whoops, will take a fairly substantial size cup just there, so that's to its credit, and fairly good door bins all the way back. A little bit of detailing here to try and make it interesting, and it does have central locking as well. Moving on to the main dashboard, it's a clever piece of keeping the price down engineering here with a central binnacle, so you only have one set of instruments and one design of dashboard moulding, so it doesn't matter if the car's left or right hand drive, you just get this one style of dashboard, which saves an awful lot of time, effort and indeed money in the factory. Now, T-shelf wise, we have got a good T-shelf. It's rather slopey, so you need ideally a cup with some kind of rubberized base on it, otherwise you will end in tragedy. And we even have a small scoopy area for nibbles to be kept in the middle. Communal nibbles, biscuits to be shared, can stay in the center. And we have a pair of good sized speakers up in the top of the dash, which is actually a really good position in terms of audio quality, because it fires up into the glass and back at you, so that can work out quite well. Instrument binnacle itself, quite nattily toned in dark blue with white needles and numbers, so it does look kind of funky and fun. Speedometer goes to 120, which is probably a bit optimistic to be perfectly honest. The fuel gauge is probably the least troublesome dial on the car, because this is astonishingly frugal, around 50 mpg. And we got a tachometer, a little rev counter as well, redlining at 6,500 RPM. Now, coming down on the left-hand side, airbag for the passenger on the left. On the right-hand side, if it's a left-hand drive car, airbag for the driver here on the right. Whoops. And in front of the driver, we have an additional panel of warning lights. All the indicator, headlamps, door open, that kind of stuff. That's all here on this little panel here in this otherwise quite bland and plain grey plastic, surrounded by black plastic. In the centre we've got two big air vents, and these are very Italian styled air vents, which are repeated on the left and the right hand side of the dashboard. These are the same air vents you will find in a plethora of Italian cars, Alfas, Lancias, Maseratis even Ferraris as well. On Italian cars all through the 1980s into the 1990s, actually into the noughties as well I think. It's actually a nice little nod and giveaway that this is an Ital design, Italian styled car, even though it's got a Korean badge and then an American badge on the nose. In the centre, very, very plastic indeed. The entire car is the most plasticky thing you think you've ever touched. Huge hazard light warning switch, although these are apparently fairly reliable cars, so you won't be using that too much. A double DIN area, only a single DIN head unit in here, but you could fit a double DIN in there if you wanted to. You make a bit of sat-nav happen and stuff. Not many more controls onto this. Heated rear window. I blanked off something else, maybe fog lights. And yeah, just basic non-air conditioning fan controls down here. The steering wheel has become very Chevy, very Americanized, with this textured center area, the three spokes. It actually reminds me a little bit of the PT Cruiser's steering wheel. It's a slightly paddedy, squoogey rubber on the outer bit and just more knockable hard plastic on the inner. And then we just have two stalks for wipers and indicators in the traditional normal places. Then hiding behind the steering wheel itself, we have got a little coin tray, because why not? Headlamp leveler for when you've got masses of weight in that enormous boot, and we discover we have got the adjuster for the left-hand mirror, which, because it's now an American car, has that wonderful little piece of advice: objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. Just because. Now, something I didn't notice when I first climbed in is this huge, almost full width parcel tray under both the driver's side and the passenger side, which is in addition to the actual glove box with additional T-shelf space. Very handy. And down below the console we have got yet more storage place, 2 more cup holders, which unlike Mini R50 you can actually fit a full height cup in, no bother at all, which is great. 12-volt socket just there, 5-speed manual. It's kind of a rubbery, plasticky feeling gear knob, and a nice bit of pleather down there underneath. At the bottom we've got yet more storage in the area where your hand knuckles down to for the handbrake, but lots of space if you want to stick a phone or who knows what in a pack of sweets. A rubbery handle on your handbrake, and behind that we've got yet another cup holder, so that's 5 cup holders I've counted so far, and another little tray for just oddments. Incredible storage. And that mad fabric we saw on the doors continues onto the seats. Boring grey surround, but then check out how exciting the centre part is. This is really quite fun. Very light, airy, and lots of levity. Oh, and the practicality continues, because look at this, a little elasticated storage bin on the side of the passenger seat. So you could probably get a small water bottle in there, you get a phone, a map. Hang on, you can definitely tuck a phone in there. This thing is beyond practical, and the headroom is just immense. I could be wearing my stovepipe hat in here, no problem at all. MPV of course, so a ton of room. Astonishingly practical, and of course, and the visibility out of this car again is just fantastic too. There's a lot to like about this car actually. I was expecting to hate it. Let's have a look in the back. Okay, so you think maybe it's going to have the clever hidden door handle like on an Alfa 147 and 156, but no, it's a regular door handle. But the door itself, again, hugely tall, goes right into the back of the C-post, so loads of access. The wheels are pushed right into the very, very corners of the car, so massive wheelbase, tons of space between the wheels, making it incredibly practical, lots of usable space inside, so getting in really, really easy, which is great. And there's not even much of a duck down for this gutter just here. Climbing inside, we are faced with more of this wild fabric, really cool. 3 seat belts, wind-up windows, more exposed screws, and hard, not very tactile plastic. But that's not what you're paying for in this car, because frankly, you're not paying a lot. You have got a storage bin on the passenger side, not on the driver's side. No more cup holders to be found. The doors are basically completely plain and devoid of anything beyond the absolute necessities and some very, very tough plastic. But in terms of comfort, you know, I've got lots of room for my feet. I'm not trapping my toes under the chairs, which is really uncomfortable sometimes in some cars. I've got plenty of knee room. It's actually quite acceptable. I've got, if there's someone sat next to me at the moment, it would be pretty cramped, but for just 4 adults, there's a ton of, I've got shoulder room, I've got headroom, there's even hand grabs here in the back, and the driver's seat has got a glasses holder with padding in it. Incredible. Right, let's get the little Chevy on the road. And the little 1 litre, surprisingly smooth. There's a little bit more engine noise than you might expect from such a small engine. Way. Oh my word, there's a PT Cruiser. Right, pulling away. It's not got a lot of power, but then there's not a lot of weight either. So it doesn't feel too bad off the mark actually. It doesn't feel slow and sluggish at all. What does strike you is the pedals. The layout is very, very tight indeed. The clutch has kind of no weight and a weird kind of rubbery springiness to it. And the gear shift is a bit like an arcade game. It's just flappy and all over the place. Wow, American cars today. Check out that truck. Wow. So yeah, this is interesting to drive. The visibility is spectacular. You can see absolutely everything in every direction. There's so much glass around the car that, you know, you have no issue seeing in any direction. These big quarter lights, not opening obviously, give you loads of view down towards the front corners of the car. The mirrors are relatively large, but unlike on an Alfa 145 and 6, where you have this little scoop down to see lower, it actually scoops up on this door. Makes it a little bit unusual. You do very much feel like the entire dashboard is wrapping around you because you're kind of sat inside it and behind it. Surprisingly large amount of space taken by the dash itself, considering how far away the engine area actually ends to what you've got here. you're sitting quite a long way back, but it doesn't really encroach too badly on the car itself in terms of passenger space. Okay, getting up to sort of mid-30s mph, and the road noise is quite loud actually. It's a little bit off-putting. Wind noise is a bit much as well, and that's only at 35 miles an hour. And the brakes, well, yep, that's nasty. The brakes are, well, they're just about there. So this car was initially up against other small MPVs like the Suzuki Wagon-R and the Toyota Yaris Verso, but it looked a bit kind of cool and funky and interesting. It may not have had a recognisable badge to hang on the nose, but it did have good looks for the nose itself, which kind of counts for a lot really. And so it was an amazing seller. They shifted 2.5 million of them before Chevy took over in 2005. In, I think, 2002, Auto Express called it the best used car buy in the UK, and Top Gear had amazing plaudits for it as well. They called it their best small car because the packaging was just absolutely fantastic. There's only 2 trim levels, the SE and the SE Plus, and the price was astonishingly low as well. It was between 5,500 and 7,500, so it was really, really good value considering you've got twin airbags, radio, metallic paint, all kinds of other stuff. 3-star NCAP rating in a car this size at that time was very impressive. Bear in mind the Metro only got 1. The thing that did it no favours though was that one of the magazines, I forget which one, they said it was dangerous and unstable because if you went into reverse and turned the wheel too sharply, it would tip over. But then pretty much any high-sided car would do that, and I think a Jeep Cherokee was at risk of doing it as well. Curious thing I just noticed is that the ventilation goes the wrong way. Cold's normally on the left, not on the right. Unusual. This thing is absolutely tiny, so 3-point turn in the tiniest of roads, really not an issue. Oh yeah, you can pedal it along a little bit. That's 40 miles an hour. That didn't take too long. Now, people seem to love it, and they bought them in droves. It was a little bit hard to find because Daewoo dealer network was still fairly young in 1998. Only been around in the UK for a couple of years then, like literally 3 or 4. So these are actually sold through Halford superstores as well as the dealer network. They came with a really long warranty with very few quibbles, so people like that. They came with 3 years free servicing, which is one of the first cars to do that in this country. And they cost virtually nothing to run. I think it was something like 12.9p per mile effective running costs, including insurance of Group 2, 50 mpg, the virtually no road tax because it's making almost no emissions either. If you're after comfortable, well-equipped, cost-effective motoring, there's really a lot going for this car, and it still does cost virtually nothing to run. And if you're in the market for pretty much free motoring, then you could do a lot worse than a Matiz of any age. This car is owned by Chris, the mechanic, who came and looked at the CV boot on my Rover 200 VI the other day. This is the car he's got for customer loan, unless someone wants to buy it, in which case he's open to offers. But it costs him virtually nothing to run. I think it's something crazy like £15 or £25 a year to tax. It's just nothing. The fuel gauge just basically doesn't move because mostly it only does short journeys around town. And it weighs so little, it puts almost no wear on its tyres either. So the thing is just almost free motoring. Get out on the country lanes like this, it is a little bit harder on the car. It's not really designed for fast B roads, but the lack of speed and the lack of body control is kind of a good thing in a way because it means it's lots of fun. It means you can attack a corner at relatively low speed. We were following a big panel van at 45 miles an hour and we're pitching in and rolling quite dramatically, and it feels like we're absolutely hooning along, when in fact we're just barely moving, frankly. If I was in the Mercedes, I'd be looking at my watch and wondering why it's taking so long to get here. So it's a 5-speed gearbox and the changes are relatively horrible, but you can pitch it through a corner at not pretty high speed and have quite a fun time, just being aware that it might fall over, but it probably won't, so it's all fine. The brakes, well, We found they're a bit woolly when we pulled up to the traffic lights pretty much straight away. Nice Mark III MR2. There is nothing behind us. Let's go for an emergency stop. Actually, when you really hammer them, that's not so bad. I was looking at some buyer's guide from the late noughties about whether or not you should consider buying a used Matiz, and basically very little went wrong with them. I think there was a problem with the plastic inlet manifold on the Daewoo ones from early days. I'm not sure if that was fixed on the Chevy ones or not, but certainly there's very little else that goes wrong with these cars. They seem to be a really solid buy. Although they are not the greatest dynamically, on a road like this where it's straight and the surface isn't terrible, they're actually not too bad. Yeah, it doesn't really like doing a quick getaway. You can do it, but it feels a bit laboured, and we're going to be hitting a fairly steep hill in a moment, and it's not going to enjoy that very much at all. I know some people don't like the central instrument thing, but I'm a Mini owner and I don't have a problem with it. I'm quite used to it. It does take your eye away from the direct line of sight to the road a little bit, but as long as you're not constantly looking at it, like if you're in a like an average speed check, it does become something of an issue to constantly have to look over there all the time. And this car's only got 55,000 miles on it, which isn't really very much at all, and I've got to say it does feel a little bit worn, tired if you like. And I don't know how tired it felt when it was brand new, to be perfectly honest. The thing is that fundamentally they're very solid underneath, but the plastics and the rubbers and everything else just doesn't give you that feeling of quality. You can tell it was built down to a price. Fairly hard wearing stuff, but you can see where the paint has worn off the silver on the dashboard. I can feel a bit of splitting on the back of the steering wheel. So yeah, it's not the finest of materials. Oh, on the carpet, it's kind of coming out of the sill tread on the driver's side. There's lots of little niggles that make it not 100% as lovely as perhaps it could be, but it's still a fairly nice car if you can live with those little niggles. And for the price on one of these things, it's really not going to be very much at all. And I'm surprised how many of them there actually are left. I've not checked the numbers, but you do still see lots of them of all generations. There was one in the same car park I stopped in to film this thing, so they literally are everywhere. This really is the kind of motoring I can very much get on board with and respect, because it's a car that will cost you virtually nothing to run. It's very little in the way of pollution, and it will go literally anywhere. You could take this to the top of Scotland, take it across Europe. You might be a bit sweaty with no air conditioning when you get to the southern parts of it, but it'll literally go anywhere you want, and it'll last for years and years. It might get tattier and scruffier, but it will keep on going. And it'll be frugal and cost effective when it does it. There is a lot to be enjoyed about cars like this that will just keep on going and going and cost you virtually nothing to run. Leave your preconceptions and your everything else at the door and just enjoy the car for what it is. It's great. Well, I hope you've enjoyed. Oh wow, oh, that is just beautiful. That is so nice. A 3-door Range Rover, I think it's, oh man, early 70s, beautiful. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this ride out in this interesting piece of Italian exotic design. I've certainly been awakened to how good these things really are. If you've enjoyed this, please do like and subscribe, and join us again next time driving something completely different.